If you think you know how this story ends, you're dead wrong. Because when Brenda Kensington tossed that wine glass in the face of the 68-year-old waitress, she had no idea she was humiliating the owner of a $47 million fortune. My name is Lucas. I'm 28 and I'm the manager at Earth's Palette restaurant. I've been working here for 5 years. And in that time, I've seen it all. Demanding customers. Kind customers is customers who leave generous tips, and customers who complain about everything. But what I witnessed that Friday night, it changed the way I see people forever. Let me tell you about Mrs. Sebastia. Though everyone calls her Tia, she's 68 years old. A black woman with a sturdy build. Her grey hair pulled back in a tight bun. She wears the same black waitress uniform as the rest of the staff. White apron, comfortable work shoes, no jewelry, no adornments. To the naked eye, she looks exactly what her uniform suggests. Just another waitress. But here's the secret, the one that only I know in the entire restaurant. Mrs. Tia isn't just an employee. Mrs. Tia is the owner, not just of this restaurant, but of 12 restaurants in total, plus 3 commercial properties, 2 apartment complexes, and an investment portfolio that exceeds $47 million. So you're probably asking yourself, why would a woman with that kind of fortune work as a waitress in her own restaurant? She gave me the answer herself, the day she hired me. "Lucas," she said, with that soft but firm voice of hers, "I started cleaning floors in this place 40 years ago. My husband and I built it from the ground up. He passed away 10 years ago, but I'm still here, and I'll keep coming in to serve tables as long as my legs will carry me, because the day I forget where I came from, that's the day I've lost everything that truly matters." Ever since then, Mrs. Tia comes in every Friday and Saturday. She puts on her uniform, waits tables, clears plates, cleans up spills. And no one, absolutely no one, except me, knows who she really is. She prefers it that way, says it's her way of staying connected to reality, of remembering that money doesn't make you a better person. And also, though she never openly admits it, it's her way of evaluating new employees and the customers. Because, according to her, the way you treat someone you think is beneath you, it says everything about who you really are. That Friday night, the restaurant was packed. We had a full house. The atmosphere was elegant as always. Crystal chandeliers, white tablecloths, soft classical music in the background. The kind of place where dinner for 2 easily runs you $300. At 8 o'clock sharp, the reservation for table 12 arrived. 4 people, a middle-aged man and woman, a young woman who looked like their daughter, and another younger man. Probably a friend or business associate, from the moment they walked through the door. I knew it was going to be a long night. The woman came in first. Her name was Brenda Kensington, though I learned that later. 42 years old. Designer dress that probably cost more than any of my waiters' monthly salary. Louis Vuitton handbag, heels that clicked against the marble floor. Like she was marking her territory, jewelry on her neck, wrists, fingers. Everything screamed money, but nothing screamed class. Behind her came her husband, Richard, 45 years old, impeccable grey suit, the expression of someone who's learned it's easier to stay quiet than contradict his wife. I vaguely recognized him, a well-known lawyer in the city, not for being brilliant, but for representing people with money. Then came the daughter, Ashley, 19 years old, had her phone in her hand before she even sat down. The kind of person who documents every moment of their life for their followers on social media, more concerned with the lighting of her photos than the people around her. And finally Chad, 35 years old, family friend, as I understood it later, investor in something. He had that attitude of someone who thinks money makes him funny. The kind of man who confuses cruelty with humor. I personally led them to table 12, our best table, next to the window overlooking the gardens. I handed them the menus and explained the specials of the night. Brenda barely looked at me. She was too busy frowning. "This table is very close to the kitchen," she said. "Ma'am, this is our premium table. It's specifically positioned away from the kitchen to ensure privacy." "Well, I don't like it. I want another one." I looked around. The restaurant was completely full. "I'm very sorry, but all the other tables are occupied. I can offer you some other accommodations." Brenda sighed with that kind of theatrical exasperation that people use when they want everyone to know how inconvenienced they are. "Fine, I guess we'll have to settle. Here's the thing. Table 12 is objectively the best table in the restaurant. I know it. She knew it. But some people need to complain about something to feel superior. It's their way of establishing dominance. I left them with the menus and went to find their waitress. Normally, Carla works that section. But Carla had called in sick that morning, which meant that table 12 fell into Mrs. Tia's section. When I informed her about the new customers, Mrs. Tia nodded calmly. "Don't worry, Lucas. I've waited on all kinds of people. These won't be any different." And if only I knew how wrong she was. Mrs. Tia approached the table with her notepad in hand, 68 years of experience in every step, a kind, professional smile. "Good evening, welcome to Earth's Palate. My name is Tia, and I'll be your waitress this evening. Can I start you off with something to drink?" Brenda looked up from her menu, and in her eyes, I saw something I've learned to recognize after years in this business: disdain, pure and simple disdain. Brenda's gaze swept over Mrs. Tia from head to toe, the grey hair, the wrinkles, the sturdy body, the simple uniform. And in that moment, Brenda made a decision. She decided that Mrs. Tia wasn't worthy of respect. "Red wine," Brenda said, without even looking her in the eyes. "A bottle of your best reserve. And make sure it's not room temperature. The last time I came to a place like this, the wine was warm." "Of course, ma'am, right away. And make sure you bring clean glasses. There are smudges on these." The glasses were perfectly clean. I know because I oversaw the preparation of that table myself. But Mrs. Tia didn't argue. "I'll change the glasses immediately." I watched Ashley lift her phone and snap a picture of Mrs. Tia as she walked away. I have no idea what that was for. Probably to make fun of her later. Mrs. Tia brought the wine and fresh glasses. She served it with the precision of someone who's done this thousands of times. Not a drop out of place, not a clumsy movement. Brenda took a sip. She frowned. "This isn't what I ordered. Ma'am, this is our special reserve, our best bottle of red." "Well, I don't like it. Bring something else. An Argentinian Malbec, and this time, make sure it's the right temperature." "Of course, ma'am." Mrs. Tia didn't protest. She didn't point out that the wine was perfect. She didn't mention that the special reserve cost $300 a bottle and that Brenda hadn't even really tasted it. She just took the bottle and went for another one. Chad, the friend, chuckled. "Hey, Brenda, don't be so rough on Grandma. At her age, it's an accomplishment that she can even carry a tray without falling." The four of them laughed. Richard, less enthusiastically than the others, but he laughed. From my spot near the entrance, I clenched my fists. I wanted to go over there and tell them exactly who the woman they were humiliating was. But I remembered Mrs. Tia's instructions: never intervene. If someone ever disrespects me, let them. I want to see who they really are. Mrs. Tia returned with the Malbec. She poured it. Brenda tasted it. This time she didn't complain about the wine. But she found something else. "It's cold in here. Tell the manager to turn up the heat." "Right away, ma'am." I was the one who adjusted the thermostat. Not because it was cold. It was a perfect 22 degrees Celsius, 72 Fahrenheit. But because I knew that arguing would only make things worse for Mrs. Tia. 20 minutes passed. The customers at table 12 reviewed the menu with the attitude of someone doing the restaurant a favor by deigning to eat there. Finally, they were ready to order. Mrs. Tia returned with her notepad. "May I take your order?" Brenda didn't even look at her. "The filet mignon, medium rare, but none of that sauce you have. I want mushroom sauce, and make sure the meat is fresh. The last time I ate at a place like this, the meat tasted like it came straight from the refrigerator." "Of course, ma'am. Filet mignon, medium rare, with mushroom sauce." Richard ordered pasta. Ashley ordered a salad because she was watching her figure for her Instagram photos. Chad ordered the most expensive dish on the menu, just to prove he could. "And to drink," Brenda said, "mineral water unsweetened and with ice, but not too much ice, 3 cubes exactly." Mrs. Tia wrote it all down without batting an eye. 3 ice cubes, as if it were the most normal thing in the world, as she walked away to take the order to the kitchen. I heard Ashley say, not as quietly as she thought, "OMG, they could hire waitresses who are a little more presentable. That woman looks like she should be in a nursing home, not serving tables." More laughter. I went to the kitchen, not to supervise the order, but to warn Chef Carlos. Carlos is 55 years old. He's worked with Mrs. Tia since the beginning, 30 years of being treated like family, and he has a temper that, let's just say, doesn't tolerate injustice. "Carlos," I said, "table 12 is being difficult with Mrs. Tia. I need you to keep calm." Carlos looked up from the stove. His eyes darkened. "Difficult how?" "Comments, attitudes. You know how it is." Carlos tightened his grip on the knife in his hand. "If anyone disrespects that woman in my presence—" "Carlos, she herself asked us not to intervene. Let's respect her decision." Carlos mumbled something I couldn't hear, but he nodded, reluctantly. But he nodded. I returned to the dining room, just in time to see Mrs. Tia bring the drinks to table 12. Mineral water for Brenda, exactly 3 ice cubes. Brenda took a sip. She frowned again. "This is too cold." Mrs. Tia maintained her composure. "I can bring you another one without ice, if you prefer, ma'am." "No, bring this one back, but take out 1 cube. 2 cubes, not 3. Of course. Mrs. Tia took the glass with all the dignity in the world and went to remove an ice cube. Chad leaned towards Richard. "Hey, at least she's good for something, right? Although with that size, I wonder if she doesn't eat the dishes before bringing them to the table." Richard grimaced uncomfortably, but he didn't say anything in defense of anyone. Ashley was still on her phone, recording snippets, taking photos. "I'm going to document this," she said. "People need to know the kind of service they give at these supposedly fancy places." While they waited for the food, Brenda found more things to complain about. The music was too loud, then it was too quiet. The candles on the table smelled too strong. The tablecloth had a microscopic wrinkle. Each complaint was an excuse to call Mrs. Tia and make her go back and forth, like she was a wind-up toy. And Mrs. Tia endured it all with a patience I didn't understand. At some point, I approached her while she was preparing some appetizers for another table. "Mrs. Tia," I whispered, "you don't have to put up with this. I can take care of that table." She looked at me with those dark eyes that have seen so much in life. "Lucas, this isn't the first time someone has treated me badly because of how I look. And it probably won't be the last. But I've learned something in 68 years. People who need to humiliate others to feel big, it's because they feel very, very small inside. Let them. I want to see how far they go." But Mrs. Tia, Lucas, trust me, I know what I'm doing. So I stepped back and observed. The food arrived, perfectly prepared. Brenda's filet, exactly medium rare. Richard's pasta, al dente. Ashley's salad, fresh and well presented. Chad's expensive dish, made with the artistry that has made our chef famous. Mrs. Tia served each dish with elegance. Brenda took her knife and cut into the filet. She tasted it, and here comes what I knew was coming. "This meat is raw," she said. It wasn't raw. It was perfectly medium rare, pink on the inside, seared on the outside. Exactly as she asked for it. "Ma'am, this is the medium rare you ordered. If you prefer a different doneness." I said medium rare, not raw. "Take this back and bring me one well done, and hurry. We don't have all night." "Of course, ma'am." Mrs. Tia took the plate, walked toward the kitchen, and as she walked, I heard Brenda say to the others, "I just can't with these people. You give them a simple instruction and they can't even do that right. That's why they are where they are in life," Chad added. "Well, you have to admit that for her age and size, it's impressive that she still works, even if she is as slow as a turtle." More laughter. I followed Mrs. Tia into the kitchen. Chad already had the knife in his hand, ready to redo the steak. "Mrs. Tia," Chad said with a tense voice, "the steak was perfect, you know it." "I know, Chad." "Then why do you let her?" "Because I want to see, Chad. I want to see what kind of people they really are, and I almost know." Chad redid the steak, this time well done, dry as cardboard, as any well-done steak would be. Exactly what Brenda was about to receive. Mrs. Tia brought the new plate. Brenda tasted it. "This is too dry now. I can bring another medium rare, ma'am." "No, I've lost my appetite for steak. I want you to take this plate off the bill." "Of course, ma'am." And as Mrs. Tia wrote in her notepad, I saw something that no one else noticed. On the back wall near the kitchen entrance, there's an old photograph. Black and white. It shows a young couple standing in front of this same restaurant on its opening day. 40 years ago, the man has a mustache and smiles proudly. The woman is young, slim, with her black hair pulled back in a bun. She's wearing a white apron. That woman is Mrs. Tia, 40 years younger, but with the same eyes, the same kind smile, the same dignity. No one at table 12 had bothered to look at that photo. No one had noticed the resemblance. To them, Mrs. Tia was invisible, just an old, black and overweight waitress who didn't deserve their attention or respect. But that photo told a story that they never bothered to ask about. Brenda decided that even though she wasn't going to eat the steak, she was going to have more wine. A lot more wine. By the time everyone else finished dinner, the bottle of Malbec was empty, and Brenda had ordered another. The alcohol didn't improve her attitude. It made it worse. "Hey, waitress," she called to Mrs. Tia, snapping her fingers. "More bread. This is stale." The bread was freshly baked. I know because I saw Chad take it out of the oven less than an hour ago. But Mrs. Tia went for more bread. "Hey, waitress, more water, but this time no ice." I changed my mind. Mrs. Tia went for more water. "Hey, waitress, clean this up. Some sauce spilled." Brenda had spilled the sauce while gesturing with her wine glass, but Mrs. Tia went for a rag and cleaned it up. Each order was more demeaning than the last. Each snap of the fingers was a reminder that for Brenda, Mrs. Tia wasn't a person. She was an object, a tool to use and discard. And through all this, Ashley kept recording, kept documenting, with a cruel smile on her lips. "This is going to be viral," she said. "The most pathetic service I've ever seen. My followers are going to die laughing." Richard finally spoke up. "Brenda, maybe you should. Tone it down a little." Brenda looked at him with eyes that could cut glass. Tone it down from what, Richard? I'm paying for a service. I have a right to demand quality. It's just that the lady is getting up there in age. So what does that have to do with anything? If she can't do the job, she shouldn't be working. Simple as that. I'm not going to lower my standards because someone decided not to retire when they should have. Richard shut up. As he always shut up. Chad poured himself another glass of wine. I agree with Brenda. These places charge a fortune, and then they send Grandma Ethel to wait on you. It's ridiculous. Mrs. Tia heard everything from her position by the bar. I know, because I saw her. She heard every insult, every taunt, every derogatory comment about her age, her weight, her skin color. And she didn't say anything. She just waited. I didn't understand what she was waiting for, but I would soon find out, and so will you. Because what happened next in that restaurant is something that none of those present would ever forget, especially Brenda Kensington, who was about to learn the most expensive lesson of her life, but that I'll tell you in a minute. The clock struck 9:30 p.m. when Brenda decided she was done with dinner. Not because she was satisfied, nothing satisfied her, but because she had found enough material to complain and feel superior for one night. "Waitress," she called. "The check." Mrs. Tia nodded and went to prepare the bill. Meanwhile, Ashley reviewed the photos and videos on her phone. "Look at this, Dad. I have like 30 clips of this lady. The face she makes every time Mom says something to her. It's pure gold for my socials." Richard barely looked. I think deep down he knew what they were doing was wrong, but he didn't have the courage to say it. Some men are like that. They prefer the comfort of cowardice to the price of honesty. Brenda touched up her makeup, using her phone's camera as a mirror. "I hope at least the check reflects all the problems we had. If they charge me for the steak I didn't eat, I'm going to make a scene." Chad laughed. "Let Grandma Ethel make the scene." More laughter, except from Richard, who pretended to check something on his phone. Mrs. Tia returned with the check. She presented it in a black leather folder, as we do with all customers. "Here you are, Mom. I already deducted the steak as requested. The total is $840. Brenda opened the folder. She checked each line with eagle eyes, looking for errors. "This can't be right. There are 4 people. $840 is excessive. Ma'am, the wine you ordered is $200 a bottle. You ordered 2 bottles. The other dishes and appetizers make up the rest." Brenda slammed the folder shut. "It's a rip-off, a complete rip-off. And on top of that, the service was terrible. I'm not leaving a tip." "That's your decision, ma'am." "Of course, it's my decision. And my decision is that this place doesn't deserve my money. Richard, pay and let's go." Richard took out his credit card, but before he could hand it over, Chad interjected. Wait. Brenda's right. The service was terrible. We should ask to speak to the manager, demand a discount." Brenda nodded enthusiastically. "Exactly. Call the manager. Waitress, now." Mrs. Tia didn't flinch. "Of course. Just a moment." She looked at me from across the restaurant. She made a subtle gesture with her head. It was my signal to approach. I walked to table 12 with my heart racing. I knew what was coming next wasn't going to be pleasant. "Good evening. I'm Lucas, the manager. I understand you have some concerns about the service." Brenda looked me up and down. At least I was young and well-dressed, so apparently I deserved a little more respect than Mrs. Tia, just a little. "Concern is an understatement. This has been the worst service we've received in years. The waitress is slow, incompetent, and frankly, shouldn't be working in an establishment of this level. I demand a 50% discount on this bill. 50% minimum, or I'm going to leave the worst review this place has ever seen. I have a lot of followers online, and my daughter has even more." We can destroy this restaurant's reputation with a single post. Ashley raised her phone like it was a weapon. I have everything recorded. Every single moment of that waitress's incompetence. If we don't get the discount, this is going on the internet tonight. I took a deep breath. I tried to maintain the professional calm I've been trained to keep in this job. But inside, I was furious. Ma'am, I'm sorry your experience hasn't been satisfactory. However, our staff has provided service according to our standards. We can't offer a 50% discount. Brenda turned red. Then I want to speak to the owner right now. I'm not going to tolerate this disrespect. And there it was. The perfect opportunity. I looked at Mrs. Tia. She was still standing a few steps away, her face serene. And very, very slightly, she shook her head. Not yet. That was the silent message. The owner isn't available at the moment, I said. But I can take your contact information and make sure they get in touch with you. I'm not interested. What I'm interested in is you firing this waitress right now, in front of me. I want to see it. Excuse me, what? You heard me. Fire her. She's old. She's slow. She's fat. She has no business working here. If you fire her now, I'll pay the full bill and won't leave a bad review. If you don't, you're going to see what I can do with my influence. The entire restaurant had fallen silent. The other customers were watching the scene, some with discomfort, others with morbid curiosity. No one intervened. Mrs. Tia took a step forward. It won't be necessary to fire him, ma'am. I can leave if that makes you happy. Brenda smiled. A horrible smile, full of satisfied cruelty. See, Richard, at least she has some common sense. She knows her place. What Brenda didn't know, what no one at that table knew, was that Mrs. Tia wasn't giving in. She was setting the stage. But before I could process what was happening, Brenda did something that no one expected. She picked up her wine glass, the glass that still had a little Cabernet Sauvignon in the bottom, and she threw it directly in Mrs. Tia's face. The red wine splashed across her face, ran down her cheeks, stained her white uniform, dripped onto the floor. The entire restaurant held its breath. Mrs. Tia didn't move, didn't scream, didn't cry. She just stood there, with the wine dripping from her chin, looking at Brenda with an expression I can't describe. It wasn't hate. It wasn't humiliation. It was something deeper, more complex. It was the kind of look that tells you, you've made the worst mistake of your life. But Brenda didn't understand it. She was too drunk on her own arrogance to see what was really happening. That's to teach you to respect your superiors, Brenda said. Now get out of my sight before I do something worse. Ashley was still recording, with the widest smile I'd seen all night. OMG, this is going to be viral. A waitress being put in her place. My followers are going to love this. Chad was clapping slowly. Bravo, Brenda. Bravo. That was beautiful. Only Richard seemed genuinely disturbed. But as always, he said nothing. I was paralyzed. Never in my 5 years working here had I seen anything like this. I wanted to shout. I wanted to throw those people out of the restaurant by force. I wanted to reveal the truth right there, but Mrs. Tia stopped me with a look, and then with a calm that defied all logic. Mrs. Tia spoke. Lucas, she said in a serene voice. Could you bring me a napkin, please? I ran to get napkins. I brought her several. She took one and began to clean her face with slow, dignified movements, as if she were in the privacy of her home, as if there weren't 30 people staring at her. Brenda seemed bewildered by the lack of reaction. What's wrong? Aren't you going to cry? Aren't you going to scream? What kind of person are you? Mrs. Tia finished cleaning herself. She folded the napkin carefully and placed it on the tray she had left on a nearby table. "Mrs. Kensington," she said, "I've been in this world for 68 years. I've seen things you couldn't imagine. I've suffered humiliations that would make this seem like a compliment. I've lost people I loved. I've built things from scratch. And I've learned that the people who need to humiliate others are the ones who are the most empty inside." Brenda gaped. She hadn't expected such a response. She expected tears. She expected submission. She expected to see the waitress destroyed. Instead, what she had in front of her was a woman who seemed taller than she was, more powerful, more present. "How dare you?" Brenda stammered. "How dare you speak to me like that? I'm a customer. You're an employee. Know your place." "Ah, my place," said Mrs. Tia with a small smile. "You're right. I should know my place." And then she did something that no one expected. She began to take off her apron. The movements were slow, deliberate, like a ritual she had practiced 1,000 times in her mind. First, she untied the knot in the back. Then she lifted the strap over her head. And finally, she folded the white apron with the same care with which she had folded the napkin. Everyone in the restaurant watched in silence. The other waiters had stopped dead in their tracks. The cooks had come out of the kitchen. Chef Carlos was standing by the kitchen door, his fists clenched and his jaw tight. "Why are you taking off your apron?" Brenda asked suspiciously. "Are you giving up that easily?" Mrs. Tia didn't answer immediately. Instead, she walked over to where I was standing. "Lucas," she said quietly, "I think it's time to show them the special bill." I knew exactly what she meant. In the restaurant's office, locked in a safe, there's a black leather folder, different from the regular folders we use for bills. This folder contains documents that prove exactly who Mrs. Tia is, why she's here, and what she really owns. Mrs. Tia had shown it to me the day she hired me. She told me that someday, perhaps, we'd have to use it. But only in extreme cases, only when someone crossed a line that shouldn't be crossed. Brenda Kensington had crossed that line. I walked to the office. My legs were shaking, but not from fear, from anticipation. From the satisfaction I knew was coming, I opened the safe, took out the black leather folder, and returned to the dining room. Brenda saw me coming back with the folder. "What's that? I already told you, I'm not paying the full price. If that's some kind of legal document to threaten me, I warn you, my husband is a lawyer." Richard, the lawyer in question, looked like he wanted to disappear under the table. Mrs. Sebastia took the folder from my hands. She held it for a moment, as if deciding something. "Mrs. Kensington," she said, "you ask me if I know my place. The answer is yes. I know it very well. Let me show it to you." She opened the folder, pulled out the first document. "This is the deed to this restaurant, Earth's Palate, founded 40 years ago. The registered owner is me, Sebastia Oliveira de Santos." Brenda blinked. "Processing. What?" Mrs. Sebastia pulled out another document. "This is the registration for my restaurant chain, 12 in total, in different cities, all operating under different names, all mine." Chad dropped his wine glass. The glass shattered against the floor, but no one moved to clean it up. Mrs. Sebastia pulled out a third document. "And this is the record of my real estate holdings. 3 commercial properties, 2 apartment complexes, one of which, curiously enough, is where you have your offices, Mr. Kensington. Richard went pale. How do you know that? I'm your landlady. Or rather, I was. Lease agreements are reviewed every year. Yours is up for renewal next month. Ashley had stopped recording. Her phone hung from her hand like something forgotten. Mrs. Sebastia pulled out the last document. And finally, this is my most recent financial statement. My accountants presented it to me last week. Total net worth. $47 million. The silence in the restaurant was absolute. You couldn't even hear the clinking of silverware. Everyone was holding their breath. Brenda looked at the documents. Then she looked at Mrs. Sebastia. Then back at the documents. Her face cycled through a series of expressions in seconds: confusion, disbelief, horror, and finally, absolute panic. "This can't be true," she said. "It's a joke, some kind of trick." Mrs. Sebastia shook her head slowly. "It's no trick, Mrs. Kensington. I am exactly who these documents say I am. The woman you threw wine in the face of 5 minutes ago is the owner of this restaurant, the building you're sitting in, and a fortune your husband couldn't earn in 3 lifetimes of work." Brenda turned to Richard. "You knew this. Why didn't you tell me anything?" Richard shook his head, as surprised as she was. "I had no idea, I swear." Ashley had started to sweat. Her perfect makeup was beginning to run. "The video," she muttered. "I recorded everything. Oh my God, I recorded everything." "Yes," said Mrs. Sebastia, turning to look at her. "You recorded everything, every insult, every humiliation, every racist and fat-phobic comment. And above all, you recorded your mother throwing wine in my face." Ashley desperately searched for the delete button on her phone, but before she could touch it, Mrs. Sebastia raised her hand. "Don't bother deleting it. Our security system recorded everything too. We have cameras in every corner of the restaurant, audio included. So even if you delete your video, I have a perfect copy of everything that happened tonight." Chad stood up from his chair. "Look, Mom, it was all a misunderstanding. We were just joking around. We didn't know who you were. If we had known—" Mrs. Sebastia interrupted him. "If you had known who I was, you would have treated me differently." "That's exactly the problem, Mr. Kensington. You didn't treat me badly because I'm a bad waitress. You treated me badly because you thought I was insignificant, an old black fat woman who didn't deserve your respect. That says everything about who you really are." Brenda tried to speak. "Mrs. Sebastia, please, we can talk about this. I'm sure we can come to an agreement. My husband is a lawyer, we can. I don't need lawyers, Mrs. Kensington. What I need is for you to understand something very simple. Respect shouldn't depend on how much money someone has in the bank. You should have treated that old black fat waitress with dignity, even if she was exactly what you thought she was, an employee doing her job." Brenda started to cry, crocodile tears mixed with expensive mascara. "I'm so sorry. I'm really sorry. Please, let me make it up to you somehow. I can write you a check. I can apologize publicly. Whatever you want." Mrs. Sebastia was silent for a moment. Looking at Brenda with that expression, I still couldn't completely decipher. "What I want," she said finally, "is very simple." She bent down and picked up her apron from the back of the chair where she'd left it. "I want you to pay your bill. The full price. No discount." Brenda nodded desperately. Of course. Richard, pay it right now." Richard pulled out his card so fast he almost dropped it. Mrs. Sebastia continued. I want you to understand that you are permanently banned from this restaurant and any of my other 11 restaurants. If I see you here again, I'll call the police." Brenda nodded again. "Yes, we understand. We'll never come back. And I want you to leave. Now. Without making any more scenes. Without any more attempts to apologize. Just go. And think very carefully about how you treat people from now on." Richard signed the card receipt so quickly his signature was illegible. He stood up, took Brenda by the arm, and practically dragged her towards the door. Ashley followed them, still with her phone in her hand, muttering something about deleting the video before it was too late. Chad was the last to leave. He stopped at the door and turned around. "Mrs. Sebastia," he said, "about my office lease." "You'll receive a letter from my lawyers next week," replied Mrs. Sebastia without looking at him. "I suggest you start looking for a new space." Chad paled even further. He left the restaurant without another word. The door closed behind them. And then, as if someone had lifted a spell, the entire restaurant exploded in applause. The other customers, the waiters, the cooks, even Chef Carlos, who had been containing his rage all night, was applauding with tears in his eyes. Mrs. Sebastia stood in the middle of the dining room, with her apron still in her hands, receiving the applause as if it were the most normal thing in the world. I walked over to her. "Mrs. Sebastia," I said, "that was amazing." She looked at me with a small, tired smile. "No, Lucas, that was necessary." She put her apron back on, tied the knot in the back. She smoothed out the wrinkles in the fabric. "Now," she said, "I have other customers to attend to." And just like that, as if nothing had happened, Mrs. Sebastia went back to work. But the story didn't end there. In fact, it was barely beginning. Because what none of us knew at that moment was that Ashley hadn't deleted the video. She couldn't. In her panic, she'd pressed the wrong button. Instead of deleting the video, she'd posted it, live, to her 40,000 followers. The notification hit my phone an hour later, when the Earth's pallet had finally emptied out and we were closing. Lucas, one of the younger waiters, called me over. "You have to see this." He showed me his phone. The screen displayed an Instagram post, Ashley's video. 30 minutes of footage capturing everything, every insult, every humiliation, the wine in the face, and the final shocking revelation. It had over 100,000 views, and the comments were devastating. Not for Mrs. Tia, for the Kensingtons. "This Brenda is the worst person I've ever seen in my life," read one of the top comments. "I hope her business fails. How can anyone treat an elderly woman like that?" said another. "What disgusting people." "The Kensington family is everything that's wrong with the rich," a third declared. "I hope they lose everything." The video was going viral, not as Ashley had hoped, not to expose the bad service of an incompetent waitress, but to expose the cruelty of 4 people who thought money gave them the right to triple on others. I went to find Mrs. Tia. She was in the kitchen, having coffee with Chef Carlos. "Mrs. Tia," I said, showing her my phone, "you have to see this." She watched the video, read a few comments, and to my surprise, she didn't smile, she didn't celebrate. Instead, she sighed. "Poor girl," she said, referring to Ashley. "She had no idea what she was doing." "They humiliated you," I said. "They deserved it." Mrs. Tia shook her head. "No one deserves to have their life destroyed, Lucas. Not even people like them. I just wanted them to understand, to learn." I didn't want to destroy them. But the video is no longer in my hands. It's in the hands of the internet, and the internet is ruthless. She was right. Over the next few days, I watched as the Kensingtons' lives unraveled in real time. Brenda's event planning company, which she'd built up for 15 years, started receiving cancellations. Clients who'd seen the video, vendors who didn't want to be associated with someone like that. In less than a week, she'd lost 70% of her contracts. Richard's law firm issued a statement distancing themselves from his personal behavior. Although they didn't fire him immediately, he was relegated to minor cases. His reputation was tarnished. Ashley lost her Instagram account. She didn't close it herself. The platform suspended it for harassment and hate speech. 30,000 followers disappeared overnight. Her dream of being an influencer vanished with them. And Chad, the investor with the cruel sense of humor, discovered that the investors he worked with had seen the video. 3 of his most important partners severed ties with him. One of them specifically cited the video as the reason, all for one night of gratuitous cruelty, all for thinking they could mistreat someone without consequences. A week after the incident, Mrs. Tia called me to her office. The real office, not the small cubicle at the restaurant. An entire floor in one of her commercial properties overlooking the city. "Lucas," she said, "I want to show you something." She handed me a check. $500,000. Payable to a foundation for elderly people in vulnerable situations. This is part of my profits from this quarter. I want it to be used to help seniors facing discrimination because of their age, their weight, or their skin color. People like that family thought I was. "Mrs. Tia," I said, "this is incredibly generous." She shrugged. "Money is useless if you don't use it to do good. I learned that a long time ago. When I was young and had nothing, I promised myself that if I ever had a lot, I would use it to help others. This is my way of keeping that promise." I just stood there looking at her, this 68-year-old woman with her gray hair and her robust figure, who chose to work as a waitress even though she didn't need to, who endured humiliations to remind herself where she came from, and who, when she finally revealed her truth, did it not to seek revenge, but to teach. "There's something else," she said. "What's that?" "Brenda Kensington contacted me yesterday. She wants to meet with me. She wants to apologize in person." "And what did you say?" "I told her I'm not interested in her apologies, because you don't forgive her." Mrs. Tia looked at me with those eyes that had seen so much. "Because forgiveness isn't something you ask for. It's something you earn. And you earn it with actions, not with words. If Brenda really wants to redeem herself, let her show it with how she treats people from now on. I don't need to hear her apologies. I need to see her change." "Mrs. Tia," I said, "can I ask you something?" "Of course." "Why do you still work as a waitress? You have all the money in the world. You could be on a beach, enjoying your retirement. Why are you still here, serving tables, risking being mistreated?" She smiled. A genuine smile, full of years of wisdom. "I'm going to tell you a story, Lucas. When I was young, I had nothing. My parents were farm workers. I never finished school. At 18, I came to the city with a cardboard suitcase and a dream. I found work cleaning floors in a small restaurant. The owner was an older man, grumpy, who never smiled. But one day, one of the customers humiliated me. He told me I was an ugly, fat, racial slur who didn't deserve to be in his presence. I was crying in the kitchen when the owner came in. He looked at me. And he said something I've never forgotten. People who humiliate you for how you look are empty inside. Don't let their emptiness fill you. Instead, fill yourself with purpose, with work, with dignity. And one day, when you have more than them, remember this moment and choose to be different. That man became my mentor. He taught me everything I know about restaurants. He introduced me to the man who would become my husband, and when he died, he left me his restaurant in his will. It was the first brick of what I built afterward, and every time I work as a waitress, I remember him. I remember where I came from. I remember who helped me. And I remind myself that money doesn't make me better than anyone. It just gives me more responsibility to do good. That's why I'm still here, Lucas. That's why I'm still serving tables. Because the day I forget where I came from, that's the day I'll have lost everything that really matters. We stood in silence for a moment, me processing her words. She gazing out the window at the city she had conquered from the bottom up. And if they disrespect you again, I asked, like Brenda did? Mrs. Tia turned to me with a smile that held decades of experience. Then I'll do the same thing I did this time, she said. I'll show them who I am, not to seek revenge, but to teach them, because sometimes the best lesson doesn't come in the form of punishment. It comes in the form of a mirror. When you show someone who they really are, you give them the opportunity to change. And if they don't change, then at least I tried, and karma will take care of the rest. As it turned out, Mrs. Tia was right about the karma. 3 months after the incident, I found out what happened to the Kensingtons. Brenda Kensington closed her event planning business, not because she lacked money, but because no one wanted to work with her. She started attending therapy. From what I heard, she was working on her anger and her classism. Richard finally filed for divorce, not because of the video, but because of years of mistreatment that the video had brought to light. Now he lived alone in an apartment, far from the mansion they had shared, but those who knew him said he seemed calmer, more at peace. Ashley deleted all her social media accounts. She started volunteering at a homeless shelter, serving food, cleaning tables, doing exactly the kind of work she had ridiculed that night. Someone who saw her said she seemed different, more humble, more human, and Chad lost all his money on a bad investment. It turned out that without his partners, he wasn't as good of an investor as he thought he was. The last time anyone heard from him, he was working as a salesman at a clothing store, starting from scratch, like we all do at some point. I don't know whether to call it karma or natural consequences, but all of them, in one way or another, ended up exactly where they needed to be, to learn what they needed to learn. As for Mrs. Tia, she continues to work as a waitress every Friday and Saturday. The restaurant now has a 3-month waiting list, not for the food, although it's excellent, but because people want to meet the woman from the video, the millionaire waitress who chose dignity over revenge. Some come expecting to see a show. They leave disappointed, because Mrs. Tia doesn't put on shows, she just works. With the same dedication, the same humility, the same infinite patience. Others come inspired. They want to thank her for the message she conveyed unintentionally. They tell her that her story gave them hope, that it taught them that true greatness isn't about how much you have, but about how you treat others. Mrs. Tia accepts the thanks with grace, and then goes back to work. Because that's what she does. That's who she is. A 68-year-old woman who built an empire from nothing, who lost the love of her life 10 years ago and moved on, who could be anywhere in the world but chooses to be here, in this restaurant, serving tables, not because she has to, but because she wants to remember. Remember where she came from. Remember who helped her. And remember that money doesn't make people. People make themselves with every decision, with every action, with every way they treat others. Brenda Kensington chose to treat a waitress like trash. Mrs. Tia chose to respond with dignity. And in the end, it became clear who the true person of worth was in that story. Now, every time I serve a difficult customer, I remember Mrs. Tia's words. The people who need to humiliate others are the ones who are most empty inside. Don't let their emptiness fill you. Instead, fill yourself with purpose, with work, with dignity. And one day, when you have more than them, remember this moment and choose to be different. That's the story of Mrs. Sebastia, the millionaire waitress, the woman who chose humility when she could have chosen pride, and who taught 4 people a lesson they will never forget. I'm Lucas, and I had the privilege of witnessing it all. I hope this story has taught you something too, that you never judge someone by their appearance, that you treat everyone with respect, regardless of their job or their position, and that you remember that karma exists. Sometimes it just needs a phone camera to activate. If you know someone who needs to hear this story, share it. And if you ever find yourself in Mrs. Tia's position, remember, dignity is more valuable than revenge. And character is demonstrated not when everything is going well, but when everything is going wrong. Thank you for listening to the end. This was the story of the customers who humiliated the elderly, black, and plus-size waitress. Not knowing that she was the owner of the restaurant, and of $47 million. And before you go, let me tell you something that happened just 2 weeks ago. I was closing the restaurant on a Saturday night when a young woman walked in. She was probably about 25 years old. She was wearing simple clothes, an old sweater, worn jeans, shoes that had seen better days. She seemed nervous, ashamed even. "Excuse me," she said. "I know you're already closing, but I wanted to ask if you have any openings for any position, washing dishes, cleaning tables, whatever." Before I could answer, Mrs. Tia appeared at my side. "What's your name?" she asked. "Mary," the young woman said. "Mary Carmen. Tell me about yourself." "Mary Carmen." Mary shrugged. "There's not much to tell. I'm 25 years old, 2 small children. My husband left us 6 months ago. I've been looking for work for weeks, but no one will hire me. They say I have no experience, that I'm too old to start, that I should have thought about it before having children so young." Her eyes filled with tears, but she held them back. Dignity, even in desperation. Mrs. Tia looked at her for a long moment. Then she turned to me. "Lucas, starting Monday, Mary will work as a kitchen helper, starting at minimum wage, plus tips. And if she shows commitment, I'll promote her to waitress in 6 months." Mary's mouth dropped open. "Really? You're giving me the job, just like that?" Mrs. Tia smiled. "Many years ago, someone gave me an opportunity when no one else would. It changed my life. Now I have the possibility to do the same for others. I'd be a fool if I didn't take it." Mary started to cry. This time, she couldn't hold back the tears. "Thank you. Thank you." I don't know how to repay you for this. Repay me by being excellent at your job, and someday, when you have more, help someone who has less. That's how it works." Mary nodded, unable to speak. He left that night with a contract signed and the promise of a fresh start. And I was left thinking about how ironic it all was. Brenda Kensington had all the money in the world and chose to use her power to humiliate. Mrs. Tia had more money than Brenda and chose to use her power to uplift. That's the difference between having wealth and being wealthy. You can have millions in the bank and be empty inside. Or you can fill your life with purpose, regardless of how much you have. The choice is yours. Every day, every interaction, every person who crosses your path, you're either Brenda or you're Tia. There's no middle ground. And if you still don't know which one you are, ask yourself this: how do you treat the people you think can't do anything for you? How do you talk about the waiters, the drivers, the people who clean your office? How do you react when someone makes a mistake while serving you? Your answers to those questions say more about you than any resume, any college degree, any bank balance, because at the end of the day, we are all someone serving someone else. The CEO serves their shareholders, the doctor serves their patients, the parent serves their children, the waiter serves their customers. No one is above anyone else in the chain of humanity. And those who forget that, like Brenda Kensington, eventually learn the lesson the hard way. Mrs. Tia understood this a long time ago. That's why she's still serving tables at 68 years old. Not because she needs the money, but because she needs the reminder. The reminder that true greatness isn't in the title on your business card. It's in how you make people feel when they're with you. That's all I have for you today. The story of the waitress who turned out to be a millionaire. The story of the clients who thought money made them better, and the lesson they all learned that night at Earth's Palette Restaurant. I hope you remember it, and I hope the next time someone serves you a table, opens a door for you, or cleans a room, you look them in the eye and say thank you, because you never know who the person in front of you really is. And more importantly, you never know who you're choosing to be. Until the next story.